Now tell them about Rebel Angels.
About Rebel Angels?
Yes.
Rebel Angels is the title song of our first CD, the only one that's now actually finished. This was when Michael and I knew each other, but we weren't playing together yet, and I went to one of his gigs in a little coffee house called the Mud Cup? No.
Cubby Hole.
The Cubby Hole.
Glenn knows the Cubby Hole.
The Cubby Hole Cafe. And he was playing all these nice political songs, Phil Oakes songs, rousing songs. And I went into kind of a fantasy where I imagined that I saw angels in bell-bottoms and beads, 60s-looking angels, rebel angels, surrounding him and singing along. And there were lights all around, and they were blessing the music. And so I went home that night and I wrote the song Rebel Angels.
Great story.
It is a great story. And it became the title song of our first CD, which is a 6-song EP. And it's a typical Reb song in that it's a stretch to find out what to play with it. You know, one of the things that's been best, the best of course is Reb herself, but one of the things that's the best. Reb her songwriting has taken a turn. We're both now very influenced. We're part of Ars Chorales, where just even as Ars Chorales, sometimes she'll hire like a small chamber orchestra, put it together, and we'll do anything you can name. And we did one with 4 different Bach, a concert, with Old Man Bach and 3 of his sons.
And he's talking about Ars Chorales now, not Redwood Moose.
Right. We do Mozart, we do Hindemith, we do Poulenc.
A lot of different people.
Madrigals.
Ligeti.
Bach and Beethoven.
Mozart. The Beatles.
Who's that? Rudder, John Rudder.
John Rudder, the Beatles. And
so that all of that classical influence, even though I have no classical training on guitar, I mean, I'll find myself playing a lick that's basically stolen from J.S. Bach. And Reb's songwriting, always included elements of a Celtic, and now it includes elements of Celtic, elements of folk, and elements of what people refer to as art songs. It's taken a giant leap out of the regular folk music that people are used to. And all of it, I have to really become much more inventive than I ever was before. And also, I had, outside of fancy three-finger picking and slide bottleneck guitar, I had never been an outstanding guitarist and never really pushed myself on that. I just took what came naturally to me. Fortunately, there were some nice things that came naturally to me. But in terms of really playing lead, I really didn't start to do that until I got very ill and I was out of work for 6 months. And that's when I took 2 songs. I took one by Helen Avakian and one by Kurt Henry. And I used those 2 songs to try and teach myself bluegrass picking. And I would play those 2 songs, one after the other, for 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes 12. And I learned a lot, and I've always learned a lot watching Kurt anyway. I can't learn from Helen because Helen's too far past me. And I had reached the point where I was starting to be a halfway decent guitarist myself, and then in order to do justice to Reb songs, I've had to, really go off into other influences that, as I say, have more to do with classical than with standard folk genres. But the Lily of the Tabby song, for example, she's doing a John Hurt figure, and I'm basically doing stuff stolen from Jerry Garcia playing dog music with Grisman. That and a little influence from Happy Melody Traum. So. And in terms of, is there anything that you wanted to say about the fire?
The fire, do we have time?
Sure, we have as much time as you need.
Okay, well, the fire. There are many, many emotions associated with the fire. For me, I didn't see it happen. I was at work when it happened. My first and most difficult moment was coming home and seeing a blackened shell and having the road covered with ice. The firemen were still there. I was expecting it to be burned to the ground, which might have been easier, but instead I saw a blackened shell. My first thought was of the cats, of course, and I kind of was afraid to think about Lily, and that was the hardest loss. But basically everything I owned was in that house. This is the house we're in now. Michael has a lot of things in it because he lived in this house. His family owns the house. I have nothing of my own except one little bag of things that somehow I had stored over here. Some old drawings and some old school papers, and I didn't know they were there, and it was really nice to find them because there wasn't anything valuable, worth money. It's just things, but there were pieces of my life in that house. And it was only really the kindness of people and the incredible caring and kindness that helped us get through those first couple of weeks, the benefits and people bringing us things. I have more beautiful clothes than I ever had before, and the clothes have helped me a lot. The beautiful clothes are sort of one of the things that's holding me together. The other thing one of the most noteworthy moments is the night of the fire, when I was still pretty much in shock, and I still am in shock. It's only 2 months. I still am in shock in some ways. But Charlie Nicely, our friend, the wonderful bass player, came into the house with a banjo case in his hand and handed it to me. I had lost my banjo. I didn't mention the banjo because I'm pretty much a beginner, but the banjo was burned in the fire, and that very night he brought me a new banjo, and it's a much better banjo than I had before. And Charlie said to me, I know what you're going through. I lost a house in a fire, and he said, I know how you feel now, and I know how you're going to feel. He was absolutely right, and Charlie has been our wonderful supporter all this time, and so have many people. And Charlie, having been through the experience, and he kept bringing us things, and he kept asking us what we needed. He would give us rides places. He's been a real trooper, and so has his wife, Gail. They've both been incredible. So, I mean, this was a life-changing experience on the negative side in a way, but also on the positive and spiritual side. It's been a spiritual experience because both Michael and I wouldn't say we're formal Buddhists, but we are very Buddhist in our thinking and understanding that materialism and things are just that. They come and go. Being attached to things is, what chains us in a way to life on earth. And so in a way it's been freeing, and it's been a way of starting over, and it's been a way of finding out who our friends were and how many friends and kind people are out there. So it's been a good lesson in that sense. And it's been also a good lesson in how to find strength inside. And the experience, the grief and the loss are very different. Now, what I do for a living, I don't do music for a living, unfortunately, but what I do for a living is I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a social worker. So, you know, I've encountered grief and loss and stories, horrible stories, and I've even worked with people who have lost houses. And of course, people who have lost people and who have lost animals. I never dreamed what it would be like for me. I never imagined what it would feel like. And I'm still a little baffled because a lot of it is, you can't put it into words. There's sort of a numbness. You know, I felt sort of removed from a lot of things for a long time. But that doesn't even say it. You can't really put it in words. I did write a song. The song is not quite finished. Actually, I wrote 2 songs. One is called Thank You, My Friends. And it's about thanking the people who helped. And it's a jolly song. The other song is called The Ashes, and it's a very, I would say, probably a dark song. Probably just a song about the feelings that go with looking at that burned out shell. And I've been looking at it every day since it happened. I've walked through the house, looked at the things that are little shards of glass, little pieces of clothing that I remember, wires. That's been an experience. There's no way I could have avoided going through those ruins. And yet a lot of people said to me, oh, don't go in there. It'll be an awful experience. And I didn't find it totally an awful experience. I found that it was a necessary experience. It's part of the process. And until it comes down, I'll probably be going back over there and looking. And I still don't really know what it means. I love to try to find meanings in things. But I'm at a loss for words about this. At least those kind of words.
There's definitely a protective amnesia. Amnesia is not quite the right term, but there's a...
selective memory loss.
It's like an intentional shutting down. I went through an intense experience at the end of a relationship where I eventually, years later, realized that in order to protect itself, my emotional system basically shut itself down. And people have asked me what's it like to live, you know, with that still there. And it's like a selective form of denial. You know, it's just, you know, you build a wall between yourself and the implications of all of that. So when Reb said that, you know, in some senses she's still in shock, I think that's certainly true for me. And particularly since I was the one who was there, and I didn't succeed in getting the cat out. I did actually succeed in saving her car. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, yeah.
My Subaru, which was parked 25 feet away, got its driver's side pretty thoroughly melted, although it was still running. Although it gave up the ghost about a month and a half after that. But I mean, there's definitely... there's a suspended thing that hasn't...
Suspended, that's a good word.